I do think that we're going to see a bubble, a Bitcoin bubble fueled by the ETFs, which pops somewhere in the middle to the late part of this year. And that will be the peak of the cycle. Bitcoin could go definitely above the all-time highs and maybe even above $100,000. But there's a series of other factors that are going to occur that is going to tremendously affect the world. Hi guys, my name is Colin and this is Colin Talks Crypto. And I just wanted to bring you a brief update on the situation and the state of affairs of the economy and the stock market and the 2024 year, which happens to be an election year, and how I see the future events relating to both legacy economy and markets as well as the crypto space, because crypto is correlated to the legacy economy. I do think we're getting close to the actual top of the market. I think that unemployment is going to start climbing, and I think that something's going to start to break. And then I think that the Fed is going to have to lower rates rapidly in response to that breaking. And it's going to happen just like every other time in history, with the added element this year that we have election year. And this is interesting because a lot of people will cite this as being a reason why it cannot happen this year. But actually, I think that there's a way it can even compound the fact that it can occur this year. And that's the fact that Trump is the forerunner for the Republican nominee for the Republican Party for US president. And he, by every metric, is winning by a landslide. Now, that is the arch nemesis of every liberal person in power right now. And the last thing they can allow happen is him to regain control of the country. Trump is feared by, it's a minority, but it's by a very vocal and powerful minority. And they'll do, as you probably have seen, just about anything. And I want to emphasize anything to keep him from power again. That's this year, right? So what I think is going to happen is he's going to continue to win each state one by one in the primaries. And the other side's going to have to make a decision, like, how do we not let this happen? Well, we have a collapsing economy already. And I think that one of 4 events is going to occur, one of 4 very specific events. And I've got reasons to believe each one of these could happen this year. And I think they'll be used, one or more of these will be used as an emergency. And with that emergency comes then, in the corrupt people's minds, the right to do things differently. For example, take extreme measures to control the country, and also, most importantly, to censor the country and all the information that is considered misinformation, which is essentially censorship. So I'm going to share those 4 events. I made a post on this. This is my prediction for this year. And I think it all ties together. It's going to be how they try to keep Trump out of office, and it's going to be the scapegoat simultaneously for a crashing economy. And it's going to be what they use to try to maintain their grip on control of this country by any means necessary, because they will do literally anything they can to maintain control of this country. So, I guess the 5th thing I didn't add to the list, as I just said all this, now I'm thinking about it. I guess the 5th thing would be to assassinate Trump, but I think they know that that would be a mistake. You can't create a martyr out of someone that famous and not pay for it. But again, they would probably do anything. So maybe that's like a distant 5th option. But I think one of these 4 things will happen in 2024, timed with an economic collapse, because it's a scapegoat for the collapse. And it's also a way to keep Trump out of office simultaneously. And the reason for a collapse is not just political, and it's not just for control, although it is those things as well, but it's also just the natural progression of what has happened economically over the past several years, starting with pandemics and lockdowns, and then destroying small businesses, and then printing enormous amounts of money to bail out the economy and to fund all this pandemic measures. And that, by increasing the monetary supply tremendously, nearly doubling it, is what then had the delayed effects of causing inflation, which we now feel today. In 2022 is when it really ramped up and inflation was really felt hard. And in 2023 as well. And that genie is never being put back into the bottle. And so with an inverted yield curve, the most deeply inverted it's ever been in the past 40 years, combined with that huge amount of money printing, and then the inflation that we just talked about, necessitated the Fed having to then raise interest rates as their only lever of control to combat inflation, especially runaway inflation. That's the only thing they can do. They have to raise interest rates. And so they did so, and they've kept them high for longer. And that's where we're at today. We have interest rates over 5% from the federal funds rate, and it's being maintained. And I think that it will be maintained throughout 2024 until some point in a few months, something breaks and they are forced to drop it. And so economically, we have also the formula playing just like in the past, where these are the sequence of events economically that leads to a large crash in the stock market and the economy. And that is still on the table, and that is still coming. And I think it's going to be coupled with one of these 4 events that I mentioned in my post. So it's going to be a really intense 2024, I think. I think the positive take on this, I'm not trying to be a doomsday sayer, but I do like to call something for what it is basically be prepared. The message is be prepared. Don't be blindsided. See what the options are that could be happening. And if and when one of them occurs, don't be caught off your guard. And that way you can survive better than if you hadn't seen this coming. And I do think that we're going to see a bubble, a Bitcoin bubble, fueled by the ETFs, which pops somewhere in the middle to the late part of this year. And that will be the peak of the cycle. Bitcoin could go definitely above the all-time highs and maybe even above $100,000. But there's a series of other factors that are going to occur that is going to tremendously affect the world.